I'm with Liz Kaufman from the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo. When was the zoo started and why was it started? Tell us a bit about the history.
I've been here for 25 years. About 25 years ago, we started construction on this site. The old site was in Romema, which is in the middle of Jerusalem. And it was a very small site in what's now a housing project, and they still call it the zoo. And we moved to Malcha, which was on the outskirts of the city, to a 35-acre area which was blank. All the trees that you see here now today were planted, and that would have been 25 years ago.
And what is the mission of the zoo?
The mission of the zoo is conservation, education, and entertainment. We want people to have fun. We want them to learn about conservation issues. We're part of a lot of conservation projects for breeding. We're the breeding center for a lot of animals that are here that are endemic to Israel and that have been released back. We work very closely with all of the conservation bodies and the nature reserves and wildlife people here, the Nature Reserves Authority, and all of the protection, conservation, and wildlife agencies. We work very closely with them to educate the public about conservation issues, about what they can do to help, about what they need to be careful of when they're out camping, hiking, and we are involved with the breeding of endangered species from around the world. Yeah, and fun. We want people to have fun. We want them to come and to enjoy and to see things they'd not get to see in other places.
Now, you mentioned endangered species. What sort of endangered species are you looking after?
So we have golden lion tamarins, which are a worldwide endangered species. The ones that are critically important to us are griffon vultures, which we're breeding and releasing back into the Golan, fallow deer, which we have the core breeding group of fallow deer, which are mentioned in the Bible, are endemic to this area, and we've released hundreds up north. I don't know, maybe not hundreds, but certainly tens. Up north into Nahal Sorek and other parts of the country. Sand cats, which we've bred and released, are also endangered, also endemic. Testudo clymani, which is the desert tortoise.
So it's been a very, very successful breeding program.
So far, we've been very successful. Not as much success with the Israeli subspecies of the Eurasian otter, but we're working on that. That's also a highly endangered species.
And now, how many people come here and visit each year?
It's like, I think it's between 700 and 800,000 people a year.
And what sort of animal and plant life do you have here that's mentioned in the Bible?
There are animals that are mentioned in the Bible by name, and then there are animals that are mentioned, like monkeys are mentioned. They're not endemic to the area, but they're mentioned, so we have monkeys. And we have many kinds of monkeys. Of the animals that are mentioned directly in the Bible, and we have here, again, fallow deer, sand cats. There's a lot of discussion about what exactly the Hebrew translation for some of those animals are. And we will have quotes from the Bible, from the Old Testament, next to the cages of those that are specifically mentioned in the Bible.
Where do your animals come from?
A few of them have come with us from the old zoo, and they're still with us. Tammy, who's our big hippopotamus, is well over 50. She came from the old zoo. We had Black Panthers, Ruth and Boaz. Their names were biblical. Panthers were in this area. Leopards also, lions also. We get them from other zoos who have surplus, and they're either on breeding loan or they're bought or they're just given from zoo to zoo trades. It's become very international to ship animals. We've shipped many giraffes to Greek islands, to Singapore Zoo. They went by ship with a keeper to Singapore. So there's a lot of international trade in animals. None of them are from the wild. None of our animals are caught from the wild. They're all zoo bred.
Now, you're just on the outskirts of Jerusalem and very close to Bethlehem, which is Palestinian area. Has the zoo become a bridge between different communities?
One of the things that we are most proud of is that we are a facility in Jerusalem that is not just opening but welcoming to all of the major religions of this area, so that at any given time you'll see visually what you can see are religious Palestinians walking around with religious Jews, and there are religious Christians, but they don't generally, unless we have Amish visitors, they're not in any sort of dress that you would recognize. They look just the same as any secular Israeli or secular Arab. But we have special events, for everyone is welcome. Everyone feels welcome. Our staff is very, very mixed. Our staff represents everybody. Christians, Muslims, Jews, non-affiliated, secular, you name it. Everybody is welcome.
Is education important to the zoo, and what sort of educational programs do you run?
Oh, we have a whole education department. We have children's groups during the year. We have summer programs. We have programs just for the aquarium. We have programs, the summer programs are in the zoo and the aquarium. The aquarium has its own educational staff. One of the major goals of the zoo is education. You can't have conservation without education. So education is huge. If you take a good look at all of the signage that's around both the zoo and the aquarium, it's all about education. Getting in either in sound bites or in big chunks as much information as we can about the animal, where it came from, the problems that it's facing in the world.
Now you have a green team at the zoo. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the green team, we have a number of different teams. We have animal enrichment, behavioral enrichment teams. We have green teams. We have staff support teams. And these teams are volunteer basis. And they are responsible, in the case of the green team, of encouraging bottles to be put in recycling bins. Don't just throw them out in the garbage. We have cans, you have bottles, you have paper. They collect this all. They arrange with the recycling organizations to come. And any money that we make is fed back into the animal enrichment program or the recycling program for more advertising and anything else. The water that we use to water all of our plants is all what's called gray water. It's recycled, and it's not recycled to the point where it's good for human consumption, but it's great for plants. So all of the plantings in the zoo are watered by our own gray water, also from some of the neighboring neighborhoods around us. The water comes down into our reclamation system, and then it goes back out into the gray water system. Or if you'll notice, the aquarium itself has a green roof, which reduces heat absorption, helps keep the building itself cooler. It has all of the ponds in the entrance to the aquarium. There's no filter system on there. It's all natural filtration through the beds of swamp plants. So all the water comes through and over the swamp plants, and all the bacteria that's in there cleans the water before it goes into. So that's all recycled water, which is cleaned by itself naturally, as opposed to the inside of the building where we need to use filter systems. The outside ponds can be done naturally because of the sun.
Now, the zoo's been here for many years, but you've just opened the aquarium. When did the aquarium start?
The aquarium got its first group of fish a little under 2 years ago. We had an official opening last June. We closed right away again because we only had the official opening because the family that donated the money, their eldest relative, that was his trip. That's his last trip. So we had a huge opening ceremony party. It was beautiful, but we didn't have a lot of fish in the tanks. We basically closed the building, which was a huge news thing. We opened again to the public last November, only on the basis of tours, because our signage wasn't complete and the tanks weren't fully stocked, and they won't be fully stocked because the fish have to grow. You can't ship fish big. They have to be shipped very small. because of the shipping requirements. And it will take them a year to 2 years to grow. At the time that we opened for tours, there were very small fish, and our signage wasn't complete. So we felt like we needed to give the public more bang for their buck, basically. And the tours were very educational. Our tour guides are very well trained. They have a lot of interesting information to give over, and it helps people feel like they're, literally getting more for their money. And that gives us an opportunity to explain why the tanks look the way they look and why it takes so long for things to grow into. Any aquarium that's new is a good 5 years before it begins to settle down.
What sort of fish can people see here?
We have everything. We have sharks and moray eels and rays. People, no matter what they say, they want to see the big and the dangerous. That's the first thing they're interested in. But we have jellyfish and we have seahorses. The aquarium itself focuses on the 4 seas of Israel, the 4 bodies of water that surround Israel. We have one freshwater exhibit representing the Kinneret, and all the other exhibits are saltwater. So we have the Kinneret, and then we have what only sounds good in English, the Red, the Dead, and the Med. So we have the Dead Sea, because there's nothing in the Dead Sea, is basically a not a live exhibit. It's an educational exhibit about some of the problems facing and what goes on in the Dead Sea and salt mining, etc. The beginning of the real aquarium is an introduction to the 4 seas of Israel in the first gallery, and then you pass the shoreline of the Mediterranean, you descend down into the Mediterranean, and you learn about the fish that you eat and sustainable fisheries, and why it's important to only buy from sustainable fisheries, what happens when you overfish an area. You continue down under a tunnel into our big Mediterranean tank, which is 1.2 million liters. Most of the fish in there are caught in the Mediterranean. They come up in trawling nets, and they are often damaged. They come here for quarantine. We fix up as many as we can, which is most of them, and then they go out into the exhibit. There's a 2-month quarantine before any fish is allowed loose into the building, where they go through various treatments for all the diseases they pick up in the wild. The 1.2 million liter Mediterranean tank has a 16-meter window with big puffy pillows that you can just sit on in front of it. There's an area there for events. We'll seat 150 people with bleachers that fold back. We've had a couple of bar mitzvahs there and some high-tech events that have been really beautiful, really, really beautiful. You then proceed up through the Suez Canal, which is very, very important, not just economically to the region, but in terms of invasive species from the Red Sea, mostly from the Red Sea into the Mediterranean, which is all explained into this tunnel that you go through with a movie about invasive species. And then you enter our Red Sea galleries. So our second biggest tank is a Red Sea reef tank, which is just beautiful. And that's where you'll find a living coral reef exhibit. Is the only living coral reef, the only living corals in the building, because they require very special water treatments. And it's going to be 5 years. It's starting to look really good, but in 3 to 5 years, it's going to be amazing. And then you walk by, we've got moray eels, giant potato cod, which will be up to 100 pounds, 120 pounds. Right now, they're probably 20 pounds because, again, you can only ship them when they're little. So we need to give them time to grow. Lobsters. Yeah, it's tunnels for kids to crawl through, bubbles for kids to come up in the middle of the tank.
It must be really exciting for a child to be able to stand next to a shark.
Oh, the kids love it. Love it. They like that, and their favorite, I think, is the Nemo tank.
Right, yeah.
We don't even call it clownfish. It's the Nemo tank. And in another couple of weeks, I've got dories going into the Nemo tank because, you can't have Nemo without Dory.
I imagine this, at the zoo, it's the only way members of the public can see these kind of animals, and in the aquarium, these fish close up.
Unless they travel around the world, these will be animals they don't see anywhere.
Do you have international cooperation with the organizations?
Oh yeah, we're part of several international organizations: the World Association of Zoos and Aquaria, European Association of Zoos and Aquaria. And our senior staff goes back and forth to conferences all the time. And it's the internet age. So anytime you have a question, there are several different listservs and groups, and you post a question and you'll get back answers from all over the world of people who have experience with whatever your question might be. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, let us know how it works for you, because we haven't tried that. Way more so with the aquarium, because fish medicine is sort of where bird medicine was 35 years ago. And all the time, people are making husbandry advances and welfare advances for mammals and fish and everything that's exhibited in zoos and aquaria. So the information and the choices that you have to make and the problems that zoos and aquaria face it's all out there, and it's all being talked about, which is wonderful.
What's your favorite animal?
Bad question.
I suppose you like them all.
Yeah, I do. I had the privilege of bottle feeding a baby leopard and a baby tiger at home, and that was pretty special. And I like elephants. They're really smart. I'm beginning to get very fond of triggerfish. I've been the last 2 years at the aquarium, and there's surprisingly a lot of fish which you wouldn't think, but they have great personality. And they'll come and they'll take food from your finger, especially triggerfish. They'll take food for your finger, and then they'll kind of tilt their heads and look at your finger and say, huh, that looks good too. So you get your finger out really fast.
Can people adopt an animal here?
You at the aquarium or at the zoo?
Both.
Yeah, for sure you can. For we've had many animals adopted at both the zoo and the aquarium, often for an event. We have a lion named after a rabbi, I think from somewhere in the Hamptons off of Long Island in the United States. I don't think they quite get named, but we definitely have plaques on people who have adopted sharks or rays or an exhibit. Certainly in the aquarium, people will adopt an exhibit. It happens all the time at the zoo for presents.
And what's your website for people who'd like to know more?
www.jerusalemzoo.org.il, or just plug into Google Jerusalem Biblical Zoo.
Okay, Liz, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.